This is Iran. Okay, so let's look at their escalation ladder. So the first thing the United States does, of course, is something called decapitation. What is decapitation? Decapitation is like, I just kill your leaders, you don't have any more leaders, and therefore you don't know what to do, and therefore you surrender, okay? That's the first thing the US did. It didn't work. So now what the United States is doing is attacking military targets, air defense, and military bases, okay? That's the second step. And the idea is that you beat the crap out of the military so they surrender. But that didn't work either, okay? So then what you do next, of course, is economic embargo, where you basically prevent Iran from trading with the world, right? Prevent Iran from selling oil to China, basically, by blockading the seas. And the idea here is that if the government doesn't have any money to pay its soldiers will just not fight, okay? But that's not working either. So then what you do, of course, is you attack civilian infrastructure, okay? Which is primarily water and oil. So you may have seen the news that the Israelis attacked an oil depot in Tehran. And now if you look at pictures of Tehran, it's all black, okay? And this is a war crime, or this goes against international law because you're attacking civilians. But that's what you do when you feel as though you need to apply more pressure to win this war, okay? And so you can keep on escalating. And then what you do is that now that you've attacked the civilians and they still refuse to surrender, what you do now is you use secret weapons. Secret weapons might be advanced missiles that no one's ever seen before, okay? And the point of these secret weapons is to scare the crap out of people and say, you see how dominant we are, okay? If that doesn't work, then what you do next is use biological and chemical weapons, okay? Biochemical weapons. Doesn't work either? Then, guys, nuclear weapons. All right? So what's really important for us to understand is that you must follow this escalation ladder if you are to use nuclear weapons. And the reality is that, first of all, we have not seen secret weapons. We have not seen biochemical weapons, and therefore nuclear weapons comes later, okay? Unless I see biochemical weapons being used, I refuse to believe that nuclear weapons is on the table, okay? All right, so I think we are here, which is the beginning of attacks on civilian infrastructure. But already we're seeing arguments in the American political system against the use of weapons against civilians, okay? The reason why is that if you do this, okay, if you destroy civilian infrastructure, you unite the people behind the government. Because the idea is that you use airstrikes to split apart the government and the people. And you want the people to overthrow the government for you, okay? That's the idea here. So we are at this stage, meaning that we have a long way to go before we hit nuclear weapons, okay? All right, so now let's look at the Iranian escalation ladder. So what's happening is that in the beginning, Iran does two major things, okay? The first is attack military targets, okay? And what they're basically targeting are US radar systems and air defenses. Because once these two things go, then Iran can attack whatever it wants, okay? It's also close to Strait of Hormuz. All right? And by closing the Strait of Hormuz, you put pressure on the economies of the GCC, as well as East Asia. The hope is that by blockading the economies, the GCC, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait will put pressure on Donald Trump to end this war as quickly as possible. Also, East Asia receives most of its oil from the GCC, from the Strait of Hormuz, right? So China gets about 40% of its oil, Japan gets 75%. That's a lot of oil. So the hope is that these countries will put pressure on the United States to end this war as soon as possible, okay? So that is the Iranian strategy. But if they're forced to go up the escalation ladder, what will happen is this. If you attack their economy, they will attack your economy as well, okay? With missiles, basically targeting oil fields. If you attack their civilian infrastructure, they will attack your civilian infrastructure as well. And what is the main weakness in these GCC countries? Desalination plants, okay? Desalination plants. And that's it, okay? That's the extent of the Iranian escalation ladder. Because it doesn't have nuclear weapons. It doesn't have biochemical weapons. Okay? It doesn't have intercontinental missiles that it can target the United States with. So as you can see, the US and Israel have escalation dominance because it can go way up higher in the escalation ladder than Iran. But that's the wrong way to understand this, okay? Because if you look at their strategies, Iran has much more flexibility, much more calibration than the United States, okay? When the United States attacks you, it's pretty blunt. But look, if I close off the Strait of Hormuz, I can be strategic in how I close the Strait of Hormuz. For example, if you're a Chinese ship, I'll let you pass. For example, if you are a GCC nation and you want to bribe me, if you want to pay me a tax, I'll let you pass as well. If you're a GCC nation and you're like, you know what, forget the United States, I want to be a friend of Iran, I'll let you pass as well. You understand? So by closing on the Strait of Hormuz, it creates a calibration strategy. It allows Iran to selectively and strategically apply pressure to the friends of the United States so that they become the friends of Iran, okay? Same thing with these drone strikes against oil fields and military targets, right? If you attack me, I attack you with drones. But if you don't attack me, then I don't attack you, okay? So in other words, okay, this is a really important idea. The US and Iran have different military decision trees. Okay? All right? So let me explain how. Because the United States and Israel, they're just attacking Iran. Okay? And they attack with air power, so that's very blunt. Right? Okay? So you go from one step to the next, to the next, to the next. Okay? This is the classic escalation ladder. Iran is not like this. Their decision tree is different, okay? Because their strategy is to force the United States to admit defeat and retreat from the GCC, okay? To close down their military bases in the Middle East so that Iran has control over the Strait of Hormuz and therefore it can control all world trade, all right? So that's the strategy. So this strategy means that you have different options, all right? Your options are attack Israel, military targets, civilian targets, Tel Aviv, okay? All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as you can see, if you think about it, Iran can be much more selective in its targeting than the United States and Israel. And therefore, the options that it has, it is much more diverse, which gives Iran escalation control over the situation. Okay? Do you guys understand this? All right. So let's look at why Iran has advantages over the escalation ladder. Okay? U.S., Iran. The first major difference is that Iran is active, whereas the US is passive. Okay? Another thing this is, go back to the bully example where the bully has to maintain credibility. He has to show that he's more powerful than the other kids, right? So if you provoke him, he has no choice in the matter but to hit you, okay? But you, the new kid, can choose whether or not to provoke him or not. You can choose the timing of when to provoke him. Therefore, you are active, okay? The second big difference is that Iran has a clear strategy. It knows what it wants to accomplish, and it knows how to accomplish what it wants. Remember, what Iran wants is control the Strait of Hormuz and the United States out of the Middle East. That's what it wants to do, and it's calibrating its attacks in a certain way to achieve this end goal. And it's working out very well for Iran, okay? The United States, on the other hand, doesn't know what it wants. It wants to destroy Iran. But what does that mean, okay? Destroy. And it could mean regime change. It could mean economy collapses. It could mean the civilian population starves, okay? It could mean anything. But because there's so much ambiguity, so much confusion about what it means, it confuses military strategy, right? And the last thing is, of course, is that Iran is flexible and the United States is inflexible. Okay? So by studying the escalation ladder, we discover that Iran has far more advantages than the United States. Okay? All right. So what does this mean? All right. It means that Iran will probably win this war ultimately. But there has to be major changes to its society in order to win this war. All right? So remember, to win a fight, you have to have three things: focus, clarity, and resolve. All right? You have to know what your purpose is. You have to know how to achieve it, and you have to be determined to achieve it, okay? So what does this mean for the Middle East? What does it mean for Iran? First thing is focus means unity. Meaning that you have to unite your population, which means basically crushing all dissent. We can't argue anymore. We have to unify for a purpose, okay? The second thing, clarity, is to censor people. Censorship. And we're already seeing that in Israel, where you're not allowed to film military strikes. Okay? If a drone comes and attacks Tel Aviv in Israel, you cannot film that and put on social media. Okay? The government will come and arrest you. Same thing in Dubai. You cannot show Dubai being attacked. Okay? So massive censorship going on. And resolve just means militarization, where the Middle East moves towards total war. Total war just means that every citizen now is recruited into the war effort. It just means that the entire economy is geared towards war. Okay? And one last point I'll make is this. What we need to understand about the escalation ladder is that as it moves up, we have to remember that this war is being fought multidimensionally. Okay? What does that mean? It means that the military is just one dimension, but there are four major dimensions. There are others, but let's focus on four major dimensions, okay? The first major dimension is narrative. Narrative is just basically world opinion. Second is political. Political just means the relationship of nations to each other. The relationship of the government to the people, okay? Political. The third dimension is economic. And the fourth is military. And what's really important to understand is that the military dimension is probably the least important. There are other dimensions that are much more important. Therefore, these four factors determine how the United States and Iran move up the escalation ladder. Okay? Because your purpose is to control the narrative and justify why you're doing what you're doing. Political means you still have to maintain good relations with other states, right? So as the United States is fighting this war against Iran, the United States is still talking to China. The United States is still talking to Russia, okay? So that discussion, that political discussion, determines the contours of this fight. Economic means that as this fight is still happening, nations are still trading with each other. And that factors into how the military is fought. Okay? Does that make sense? So I know this is very complicated, but you need to understand how complicated war is. It's not as simple as saying, you know what, let's nuke that guy. It doesn't work that way. Okay? There are a lot of constraints. There's a lot of factors, a lot of stakeholders involved to constrain the use of nukes.